Mastery by Robert Greene. The path from apprentice to master. There is a force inside you. It has been there since the very beginning, since the days when you were young enough to forget about the world's expectations and old enough to feel the pull of something that felt entirely, unmistakably your own. Maybe it was the way you could lose hours drawing maps of imaginary kingdoms. Maybe it was the strange joy you felt when you took apart broken machines just to see how they breathed. Maybe it was the rhythm of words forming in your mind before you even knew what poetry was. That force, Robert Greene calls it your life's task. And here is what most people never learn. Mastery is not a privilege given to the few. It is a path available to everyone who dares to walk it. We live in a world that tells you to be practical, to choose safety over passion, to trade your calling for a paycheck, to silence that inner voice before it causes trouble. And slowly, year by year, that primal force goes quiet. But it never disappears. Today, we are going to wake it up. This is a deep dive into one of the most important books ever written on human potential, Mastery by Robert Greene. A book that doesn't just inspire you, it gives you a map, a real, practical, historically proven map, from the very beginning of a craft, uncertain, humbling, sometimes invisible, all the way to the summit. And we will walk it together. Section 1. The Life's Task. Rediscovering your primal inclination. Let's begin at the beginning. Robert Greene opens Mastery with a question that most of us have never been asked, not by our parents, not by our teachers, not even by ourselves. What did you love most before the world told you what to love? He calls this the primal inclination. It is the seedling of mastery. It is not yet a skill, not yet a discipline. It is simply a direction, a magnetic pull towards something that feels deeply, personally yours. And here is the remarkable thing. This inclination appears very early, often in childhood, often before we even have words for it. Leonardo da Vinci, the obsessive observer. As a young boy in the hills of Vinci, Leonardo didn't just look at things, he devoured them with his eyes. He studied how water moved over rocks, how birds angled their wings in the wind, how light fell differently on a curved surface versus a flat one. He had no grand plan, no career path. He simply could not stop looking. That relentless, almost hunger-like curiosity, that was his primal inclination. It would later make him the greatest painter, engineer, and anatomist of his age. But first, it was just a boy with wide-open eyes. Here is what Greene wants you to understand. Most of us have this, we simply stopped listening. Think back. What were you obsessed with as a child? Not what you were good at, not what adults praised you for. What did you return to, again and again, without being asked? What made you forget to eat lunch? That thing, that quiet, persistent obsession, is a clue. It is pointing towards something real about who you are and what you are built to master. How to rediscover your life's task. Greene gives us a process. It begins with what he calls looking backward. You must excavate your own history. Revisit your childhood memories not with nostalgia, but with scientific attention. What patterns emerge? What moments of pure absorption can you recall? These are your data points. Then, he warns you about the detours. Life will have pulled you off course. Society, family, financial pressure, they all conspire to redirect you toward the safe path. The life's task is to recognize those detours for what they are, and to begin the long walk back toward your original direction. This is not about abandoning responsibility. It is about threading your true self back into the fabric of your daily work, finding ways to move, even slowly, even sideways, toward the thing that is most essentially yours. The goal of life is to find your uniqueness and give it expression. This is not a metaphor. This is a strategy. This is where mastery begins, not in a classroom, not in a training manual, but in the honest, quiet act of remembering who you were before you started performing who others needed you to be. Section 2. The Apprenticeship Phase. The Three-Step Forge. Now comes the part that most people want to skip, the part that isn't glamorous, the part that happens in the dark, before the applause, before the recognition, before the world even knows your name. Greene calls it the apprenticeship phase, and he is unambiguous. There is no shortcut through it. Every master in history, every one of them, served an apprenticeship. Some were formal, many were not. But all of them share a common architecture, a period of deep, deliberate, ego-dissolving learning that typically spans years, sometimes decades. This phase has 3 distinct steps. Step 1. Deep observation, the silent phase. When you enter a new field, a new craft, a new environment, resist the urge to speak, resist the urge to prove yourself. Instead, watch. Greene is emphatic about this. In the early stages, your most powerful tool is your eyes and your ears. Study the social dynamics of your environment. Understand the unwritten rules. Learn the difference between what people say and what they actually do. Notice who holds real power and why. Notice what the culture rewards and what it silently punishes. This is not passivity, this is strategy. The master who rushes to perform before they have truly observed is like a general who charges into battle before reading the terrain. They may win a skirmish, they will never win the war. Story: Michael Faraday, the bookbinder who became a giant. Michael Faraday was born into poverty in Victorian England. At 14, he became an apprentice bookbinder, a humble trade with no obvious connection to the world of science. But Faraday used it as a doorway. He read every book that passed through his hands. He took meticulous notes. He attended public lectures by the great scientist Humphrey Davy, wrote them up in careful detail, and sent them to Davy as a bound booklet, the ultimate act of deep observation turned into bold action. Davy hired him as a lab assistant. Within 2 decades, Faraday had discovered electromagnetic induction and laid the foundation for the modern electrical world. It all began with watching, reading, and listening with profound, patient attention. Step 2. Skills acquisition, learning over money. Here is the central mantra of the apprenticeship phase, written in bold across Greene's philosophy. Learning over money, skills over salary, depth over speed. This is the choice that separates the craftsman from the careerist. At every fork in the road during your apprenticeship, Greene urges you to ask not what pays most, but what teaches most. Seek out the position, the mentor, the environment that will force your skills to grow the fastest, even if it means accepting a lower salary, a lower title, a more difficult path. You are not investing in a job, you are investing in yourself. Greene describes this as the process of building what he calls tacit knowledge, the kind of deep, embodied understanding that cannot be acquired from books or lectures alone. It comes only from repetition, from failure, from the slow accumulation of real-world experience. Think of the blacksmith whose hands know the exact moment the iron is ready to be struck, not from reading about metallurgy, but from 10,000 mornings at the forge. That knowledge cannot be downloaded, it can only be lived. This phase is also where you must confront what Greene calls the frustration barrier. There will come a point, usually around the 3rd or 4th year of deep practice, when progress feels invisible, when you work harder but seem to advance less, when the gap between your ambitions and your abilities feels impossibly wide. Do not stop here. This is not a wall, it is a threshold. Every master has crossed it. The ones who persist discover that on the other side, something fundamental has shifted, a new layer of ability, a new clarity, a new confidence rooted not in ego, but in genuine earned competence. Step 3. Experimentation, finding your voice. The 3rd step of the apprenticeship phase is the most exciting and the most misunderstood. Having observed deeply and built genuine skills, you now begin to push at the edges. You test your own instincts. You try things that are not in the manual. You begin to ask, what would I do differently? What feels most alive when I am working? This is not rebellion for its own sake. This is the natural emergence of a real, original voice. Greene illustrates this with the story of Charles Darwin, who spent years dutifully cataloguing specimens on the Beagle voyage, absorbing everything with the patience of a true apprentice. And then, in the long, quiet years that followed, synthesizing all of it into a theory so bold, it rewrote humanity's understanding of life on Earth. The experimentation phase is when the apprentice begins, slowly, tentatively, to become themselves. Section 3. The creative active phase. Breaking the rules. You've mastered. There is a paradox at the heart of mastery, and Greene names it beautifully. You must first learn the rules with absolute fidelity, internalize them so deeply that they become second nature, invisible, automatic. And then, only then, do you earn the right to break them. Not to break them carelessly, not to reject them out of ignorance or arrogance, but to transcend them, to work at a level where the rules are no longer a ceiling, but a launching pad. True mastery is the ability to move from imitation to innovation, from learning the grammar to writing poetry. In the creative active phase, something remarkable begins to happen. The master starts to see what others cannot see. They develop what Greene calls dimensional thinking, the ability to hold a problem in 3 dimensions in the mind, to rotate it, to examine it from angles that others have not considered. This is not magic. It is the hard-won reward of years of focused attention. Story: Mozart, from prodigy to original. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart is often held up as the ultimate example of innate genius, the child who composed symphonies before he could button his own coat. But Greene reveals a more complex and more instructive story. The young Mozart spent the first decade of his performing career playing music written by others, or composing in styles dictated by his patrons and his father. He was extraordinarily skilled, but he was not yet original. It was only in his late 20s, after years of relentless practice and experimentation, that Mozart began to find his own voice, a voice so singular, so deeply his own, that it could belong to no one else. The playfulness, the darkness, the mathematical beauty hiding beneath the melody. That voice was not a gift from God. It was the distillation of 10,000 hours of craft. The creative active phase is also characterized by what Greene describes as an almost meditative relationship with your craft. The master does not merely work. They enter into a deep, absorbed, attentional state that Greene, borrowing from psychology, calls the flow state. Time bends, self-consciousness disappears. The work moves through you rather than from you. This is why great masters so often describe their best work as something that came to them. Not because it was mystical, but because they had prepared the ground so thoroughly that the creative unconscious could finally speak clearly. The creative active mindset. How do you cultivate this phase? Greene identifies several key principles. Cultivate negative capability, the ability to sit with uncertainty, with mystery, with not knowing, without rushing toward a premature answer. The masters are not disturbed by ambiguity. They are nourished by it. Return to childlike wonder. As expertise deepens, there is a danger of becoming rigid, of mistaking familiarity for complete understanding. The great ones continually approach their own field with beginner's eyes, always asking, "What don't I know yet?" Widen your scope. The most creative masters are almost always interdisciplinary. Leonardo studied anatomy to paint better. Darwin studied economics to understand natural selection. Your mastery of one domain can become a lens through which to see every other domain more clearly. Section 4. Mastery in the Age of Distraction. The ultimate superpower. We need to pause here and speak directly about the world we are living in. You are pursuing mastery in an era of infinite distraction, an era where the algorithm is specifically designed to fracture your attention, to keep you skimming the surface, to make depth feel unnecessary, because the next thing is already loading. And soon, artificial intelligence will be able to replicate the output of many skills, to write, to code, to design, to analyze, faster and cheaper than any human. In this world, what is the value of deep human mastery? Here is the answer, and it is both sobering and liberating. In a world drowning in content, the ability to focus deeply, to give sustained, undivided attention to one thing, is becoming the rarest and most valuable human capacity of all. AI can produce. It cannot yet truly obsess. It cannot bleed for a craft. It cannot accumulate the lived, embodied, emotionally textured knowledge that comes from a decade of devoted practice. It cannot have a life's task. You can. In the age of machines, your humanity is your mastery. Greene reminds us too that mastery is not a destination. It is not a trophy you hang on a wall when you finally arrive. It is a way of living. It is a perpetual deepening, a spiral staircase that has no final floor. The master is not the person who knows everything. The master is the person who is committed to the process of knowing more, who finds joy in the doing, not just the having done. That is the seed. That is the long journey. That is the craft. And it is available to you, right now, today, with whatever you have. The mindful reflection. Mastery as a way of being. So here is where we land today. You were born with a seed inside you, a unique configuration of curiosity, sensitivity, and inclination that belongs to no one else on this earth. Life may have buried that seed under years of obligation and expectation. But seeds do not die simply because they have been covered in soil. They wait. And when you give them the right conditions, attention, patience, the courage to begin again, they grow. Slowly at first, invisibly, and then, one day, they reach the light. Mastery is that reaching. It is not about being the best in the world. It is about being the fullest version of yourself. It is the long, beautiful, sometimes grueling commitment to becoming deeply, irreversibly good at the thing that most calls to you. It is available to you. It has always been available to you. The only question is whether you are willing to remember what you loved before you forgot to love it. Before you go, I want to leave you with something to sit with. Not a task, not homework, just a question. What was that one thing you were obsessed with as a child? That thing you lost hours to without even noticing, that you have quietly forgotten today? Drop it in the comments below. Let's remember together. If this resonated with you, give this video a like. It helps more people find this content and begin their own journey. Subscribe to Mindful Books, because every week we go deep into the books that can genuinely change the way you see yourself and your life. And if you have a friend who is at a crossroads right now, send this to them. It might be exactly what they need to hear today. This has been Mastery by Robert Greene. I'm grateful you watched. Now go and do the work.